Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TEPSA Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. We are thrilled every week to bring you different thought leaders from around the world, and for the next couple episodes, we are going to kind of bring a little treat and focus on different content areas that us as school leaders can be growing in to best support our teachers. And when I thought about, we need to talk about math, who can we bring in, like who is somebody who's really knowledgeable, but also just like brilliant overall. And right away, my brain went to Brittany Hege. And I am so glad that she agreed to come on with us today. So Brittany, do you kind of want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's such a treat to be here to get to chat with you. But my name is Brittany Hege. I am a former classroom teacher. And now I specifically work with teachers in schools doing professional development. It's just, I specifically focus on elementary, but it is such an honor to get to work with, goodness, hundreds and thousands of teachers and really just, I think, educate and heal maybe some of the relationships we have with math. There's this very big divide of like, oh, we're either a math person or we're not. And there's so many teachers in schools who want to grow in teaching math, but don't know necessarily how to, and don't feel comfortable doing that. And so that's kind of where I come in. I just, I'm a learner. I love going into classrooms and exploring and seeing what works and sharing that out with teachers. So that is what I do all day, every day. I eat, breathe, and sleep math education.
I love it. Well, so all of my teaching instruction was a math teacher. And so every time I've seen you share stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, because my district that I worked for really focused on us understanding how math instruction is supposed to work, the brain. So it wasn't just us teaching things the way we taught them or trying to interpret it on our own. And so what I found is there are so many educators who were never taught that. And so I love seeing all the stuff you're sharing on social media because I'm like, this is really good stuff that once you hear it, you're like, duh. But until you hear it, it doesn't really cross your mind that way. And so I love that we can have this discussion from an administrator perspective too, because as administrators, we've got to be supporting our teachers in their content. That doesn't mean we have to know everything about everything, but you might be listening today thinking, well, math is a focus area for us this year. So this is the episode I need because I just need to grow a little bit in math. And Brittany also brings a unique perspective because she's got her own young children who are of elementary age. She has a husband who is serving as a principal. So we have all those different perspectives in your household as well. But Brittany, why do you really, having been in that teacher role and working underneath different administrators, how do you see the role of the administrator in best supporting teachers in their math instruction, just surface level? How do we see, like, what do you appreciate?
I think that one of the things that I really appreciate from like a leadership perspective is, I think, providing opportunities for teachers to learn and explore. Because I think a lot of times in the work that I'm doing, I see a lot of times literacy is emphasized a lot in like building teachers' understanding of the research and all of that. And sometimes math, it's just like, oh, math still works the same way. It's always worked for however many decades. And so it sometimes gets put on the back burner. And I think, just providing those spaces for teachers to be able to talk about math, whether that is whether you have a math coach, whether you're bringing some outside support, or maybe you have teacher leaders in your building who are like the math nerd. They're digging into the research. You can see in their classrooms that their kids are really thinking and making sense of the math, even providing opportunities for them to really lead in the school and share that knowledge and experience with other teachers in the classroom. I think that's really powerful. But a lot of times I know for me, I struggled because sometimes I was learning things. I follow NCTM, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, and their best practices. And sometimes those don't always align with the best practices in reading. And so we have some of these like blanket, like, okay, we're going to have this this blanket walkthrough form, and in every classroom, we're going to look for these things, but it might look a little bit different in math. And so really leaning on that teacher leader in your building to talk about and have those discussions and say, okay, does this align with best practices? Is this, we're saying teach in this way. Is that what the research is saying? Is that what NCTM is saying? So really, I have so much grace for administrators, being a wife to an administrator, who also, we've done a lot of work on his identity as a mathematician, because he taught literacy, I taught math. And you can't be an expert in every single thing, I think, as an administrator, and know the most updated research in every single subject area, but really leaning on those leaders in your building, and giving them a voice as you implement new practices and new, look-fors and walkthroughs and all of that.
There were a couple of things you just said there that I think really resonated with me. And that was, first of all, I think we need to get out of this mindset that as the administrator, you need to be the expert in every content area. That's just not going to happen, especially when you're in a campus, sometimes with 5, 6, 7 grade levels. It's just not a possibility. But I think the other thing you really said there that I hope people hear is the importance of really amplifying those teacher leaders you already have. Because sometimes I think we think as school leaders, like, we've got to bring in an outside expert, that outside person, or we got to send the whole team to this training, when there might already be somebody on campus who's doing some pretty incredible things that honestly teachers may listen to a little bit more, because they're in the same kind of mess with them and with the same kind of kids and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think teachers are eager to grow, and I think eager to have experiences. What I've found in the work that I've done is, even if I have a teacher who maybe is a little bit resistant to changing practices in math, if I can get them to just experience it and have that first light bulb moment around it and be like, oh, if I just learned this about teaching this concept, what am I missing about all the other concepts that I teach? If we can just create a space for that teacher to have that light bulb moment, whether it is with, a math coach at the school or the teacher next door, then you are just opening this world where teachers do want to learn and grow because they see a reason or a need for it. But a lot of times there's not that opportunity to have that experience, just because there's so much going on in a school day.
But I think what you said there is so important, because I'm flashing back to when I was a teacher through this conversation, and as you said that, I was like, that was me. I was hired to teach math, and I used a lot of the stuff that I had learned growing up, and that was why I wanted to be a math teacher, because I hated math growing up, and I wanted to make that different for kids and have them be enjoying it. But I didn't really know the ins and outs of understanding some of the stuff we now know about math instruction. I remember going to a training and hearing something and being mind blown. Oh my God, I've been saying that wrong the whole time. And that immediately made me think, what else do I not know? Or do I think I'm doing correctly because it makes sense in the end, but that's not really how to do it. Reducing fractions was probably one of the things that I can think of that I'm like, oh, well, we always learn this way. And this butterfly method and all these other things, all these things that when you learn the why of not to, it makes you question everything. And so I love that you said that, because sometimes teachers just need that quick moment to go, ooh, okay, I'm more open to hear even more now, because that rocked me a little bit.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And I think there's a lot of assumptions around teaching math. I actually was talking to someone at a university, because we're working on a mentorship program for some teachers. And one of the teachers is a kindergarten teacher. And, the person that I was talking to, she made the comment, she was like, well, goodness, she's in kindergarten. She should be doing fine. Anybody can teach kindergarten. And I think there's this misconception around what knowledge is needed. We look at elementary math and we're like, oh, they're just learning to add, subtract, multiply, divide. But it's fascinating. If you look, there's actually something it's called the domains of domains of math knowledge for teaching. And there are, I believe it's 6 different domains that teachers need of knowledge that they need to be effective math teachers. And one of those is the very basic, just knowing how to do the math every day. If a teacher can divide fractions, then they can teach math. But it's oh no, there are actually 5 other domains of knowledge that a teacher needs to be effective in their practice. And so I think there's just a lot of assumptions that it's oh, because the teacher can do the math, they can teach the math. So we don't necessarily need to develop all these other domains. And so I think that's where we kind of get into, not creating those spaces for teachers to have those light bulb moments because we don't necessarily know that there's a need for it.
Yeah. So, in all your experience in your own classroom and the teachers you're working with now, how, if an administrator's listening today and they're going, okay, Brittany, I understand this. I want my teachers to grow. I want to help them. I don't even know where to start. Like there's some administrators I know who are like, I feel like everything's an issue and I don't know what is the most pressing issue. So how can I support my people, my math people?
Well, I think the first thing is maybe identifying like if it's an issue. And I think also I truly believe that we have to like feel the need before we have the motivation to change. So I think we can hear like, oh, this needs to change, but until we really see it and feel it, I think we have a little less of that like umph behind the change. So I think like the first place I would start if I were an administrator is I would just walk the building, go into your math classrooms and just see what's happening. And if what you're observing is a lot of the teacher showing how to do something on the board and students mimicking it, then I would say that means that the teachers are really doing the heavy lifting. We don't have students who are really making sense of the math. And that's an area that we need to focus on and we need to change. And so that would be a first place, I think, is like, look and see, like, is this really an issue? And you might walk into a classroom and see that teacher leader. You might see that person who has students working with manipulative. Students are making sense of math. They're having discussion. They're questioning. The classroom may look a little bit messier, but making sense of math is messy. And so it might be that, you find that person and sit and have discussions. I don't know if you have like an instructional leadership team or a curriculum facilitator. I know the acronyms are different in every state. Here they're called CFs, but sit with them and really figure out, can we get on the same place around like what our goals are? You can't change everything in math education all at one time.
Yeah.
So maybe it is just a single focus on like, okay, problem solving. There's a great book. It's actually called The Math Pact. And it's talking about getting the whole school on board with like the same math plan. And that might be a place to start. It might be doing a book study. It might be looking at the effective teaching practices from NCTM of what effective math instruction looks like. And just starting small, starting with one goal. This quarter, this year, we are going to focus on problem solving. This is what we believe about problem solving as a school. Have that teacher lead that discussion. And from there, like that is the main focus. But everything can't be fixed all at once. And I do think a lot of times we have those people in our buildings, but sometimes it can be helpful to bring in an outside source, even if it's just like a consultant or something like that, to just even help facilitate those discussions. Because it can be intimidating to facilitate that discussion if maybe you as an administrator have your own struggles with math and math education in general, which if that's you, that's okay. That is like 50% of the country identifies as not a math person.
Yep. And you said something in there that I'd love to dive a little bit more into, and that is the power and the importance of manipulatives. Regardless of the grade level that you are working with, that 5th, 6th, 7th graders, they can have value in manipulatives just as much as a preschool or a kindergartner. Can you talk a little bit about, because I know there may be some administrators, like you said, who the only math experience they have is what they went through as a student. And I know my own student experience, I did not experience manipulatives. It was kind of one of those things, if you did, it's because you were struggling. Like that's the only reason you had one. The rest of us, here's your worksheet, solve the problem, go home and practice some more. That's it. And so talk to me a little bit about this importance of manipulatives in math.
Okay, so I love manipulatives. That I feel like if you ever come to a workshop of mine, I am talking about manipulatives. And here's actually why. It is not that manipulatives are better than any other strategy or approach or model that we use in math. It is that is often like the gateway into this excitement and desire to grow in math, both for teachers and students. So one, working with teachers on manipulatives, because in order to solve a math problem with manipulatives, you need to deeply understand it. Like if I just said, okay, we're going to multiply fractions today, Todd, you're about to teach this lesson, pull out some pattern blocks, show me how to multiply fractions. unless you have that understanding, you might be like, I have no idea how to do this tool. And when
Yep.
teachers feel that, that's that moment of, oh, I have some growth to do. If I
Mhm.
can't show it in a different visual model, like I've got some learning to do for myself. So that's like just a little like PD hint there is to bring in manipulatives, even working with teachers. They love to work with them. But with students, every single child should have manipulatives in their hand at some point. And I don't know what elementary looks like in Texas. Is it K6, K5?
Everybody's different.
Yes. So, well, K5, K6, no matter what the grade, there should be manipulatives in students' hands for multiple reasons. Because one, there are 5 different ways we experience math. That physical representation is one of them. Also, if you look at just like how students learn math, like or just learn in general. At the age of elementary students, they can only think like abstractly about physical things that they are seeing. So whether it's a picture, whether it's a model, that allows them to think about these complex math ideas. But a lot of times, I think there's myths around manipulatives. We think that it's only for students who struggle. It is also for our students who, on paper, look like they've got it because it actually deepens their understanding. So if a student can do the algorithm, but they can't explain why it works, they can't show why it works, that may not hurt them in 5th grade, but it's going to hurt them in 6th grade when the understanding that we thought they had they actually don't have, and now they don't have the ability to do that 6th grade math concept. So it is for students, no matter what range they fall in. Manipulatives are, that would be a great walkthrough thing. Walk through
Yeah.
your building, see how many teachers are using manipulatives, or if they even have manipulatives like within hand. There's so many classrooms I walk into, and there's not manipulatives that they can just pull out in the middle of a lesson if it's needed. They don't have that variety in representations. They've got to walk down to a manipulative closet to get it. So it's, yeah, manipulatives are so incredibly important.
Oh, you are speaking to my math teacher heart here. I'm just like, I'm getting so excited. Like, I want to go back and do something now with kids with these things because you're so hitting it on the head here. And so, okay, as we wrap up this conversation, because we like to keep these conversations bite sized, and administrators are listening today, I just want you to walk away with this one thing of supporting math instruction. Like, what is the one thing you hope they walk away with today?
That math should be like a spot of joy in your school
Mm.
for both your teachers and your students. And if it is not, I think that is a really good kind of like sign that there's room for growth. So go into the classrooms, see what students are feeling, what they are, because there's a lot of research that has come out about how students feel about math impacts a math achievement, like their dispositions towards math. And that also comes from teachers as well. So I think just knowing that that is the goal is not that every kid can do all of the algorithms and all of that. If we can get them to a place of having a really positive relationship with math, both with teachers and the students, if that's kind of like our goalpost, then any practice that we do, any books that we read, any conversations that we have moving towards that goalpost, we know that we're going in the right direction. So I know that was a little, I'm like, that was a little like in the air idea. But math joy is something that is being talked about a lot in the math community and math identity. And when we go into classrooms and we just have so many students who are hating math and many teachers who dread teaching math,
Mhm.
um, we have to change that first before we can do any changes in practice.
I love it. So many good nuggets here today, Brittany. It was such a great conversation. So I know there's going to be some administrators who are listening going, I love that. I need that. Like, what do you do, Brittany? And I know you have a great organization called Mix and Math that you
Yes.
kind of do a lot of work with. So if people want to connect with you or learn more about the resources that you offer, how can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm just Mix and Math in all of the places. So Mix and Math is our website. We do have a schools site, so it's mixandmath.com/schools, but I'm Mix and Math on YouTube, Mix and Math on social media. We also have a newsletter, which you can sign up for. I think it's just mixandmath.com/newsletter. And essentially we take best practices and research and we kind of like summarize it in a way that feels really easy to consume for teachers, that gets them excited to want to make changes in their classroom, that gives them those ideas. And so even just, signing up for that, sending it to your teachers. I mean, I am here to support anybody and everybody who has a heart for changing math education.
I love it. So go check out mixandmath.com or mixandmath on social media. I'm telling you, that's where I learn all my stuff is by following Brittany on Instagram. So many good things there. But we hope all of you have enjoyed this conversation about supporting math instruction. Make sure that you check out next week an all new conversation as we dive into another topic that will matter to you.